Um, so just checking in on everyone. How's everyone doing?
Great.
Great.
I hear great. I hear great. Anyone not great? Good. Good. Glad to hear it. If you do have any issues over the course of the semester, let me know, especially if it's anything. Hold on. If you have any issues during the semester, let me know. Get in touch with me. That way I can help you with them. I know I've got some people who are saying that they can't always make the 10 o'clock meeting, which is totally understandable. I think what I'm going to do is upload the lecture videos to my YouTube channel, and I'll just provide the link to those videos on Canvas. Would that work for everyone?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Here, yes. Here, yes. Cool. Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. So the other thing I want to talk about. Hold on. I got this guy.
Oh.
Yeah, he's bad. Oh, okay. He's been hanging out. They kicked me out of my office, as you may not have heard. So now I get to hang out with him all day here. Cool. So let's talk real fast about the group project idea. Let me admit this person. Cool. So let's talk about the group project real fast. Because I was talking to some of my colleagues and my, I'll just have you share. Can I share my screen yet? Oh, wait. I was talking to some of my colleagues and my supervisor, and I think what I want to do is, if you want to do a group oral presentation with your group members, you absolutely can, and you can coordinate that however you want, either through Google Docs or communicating together online and just kind of putting a PowerPoint together that way. And then when we present it, you'll just take control of the screen that day and present through Zoom. However, if that's not possible for you, if you are, it just doesn't work with your schedule, or you can't really get in touch with anyone else in your group, you can do an individual presentation based off of your final paper. So basically, you just kind of be like presenting your final paper in the form of a like 5 to 10 minute long visual presentation. How does that sound? Any issues with that or any concerns?
I think that sounds good.
Cool. Yeah, I think, and if there's 4 people in your group and 2 want to do group project, 2 want to work together and the other 2 want to work by themselves, that's totally okay too. But I want to give you that option in case you wanted to have a little bit of help, and that way, like, the whole weight of the work wasn't just on your shoulders. You had someone else kind of work with on that front. But if you want to work by yourself, you just kind of work on your own, that's totally okay as well. I just want to make this as easy for you because we do need to have an oral component to the class per the university guidelines, but I don't want to make this any harder than it absolutely has to be, especially given the circumstances. If that is an issue for everyone, or for anyone, let me know. And if you are going to work together in a group, let me know by like next week. Like, oh, like, you know, Auden and Lily are going to work together, but Ryan's going to work on her own or something like that. Just that way I have an idea of who's going to be doing what and can help them out appropriately. Sound good?
See.
Yeah.
I only hear Auden and like George. That's great. Cool. So now I want to talk real fast. You may have noticed on the schedule that you have a major assignment next week for the annotated bibliography. I am likely going to extend the due date window for that by about 48 hours. So I think it's supposed to be due on a Wednesday. I think I'll be making it due between that Wednesday and Friday. So that way you've got an extra 2 days to work on that project if you need it. Because I can almost guarantee that none of you did any research over the break, which is completely fine. I would not have either if I were you. But I do want to make sure that we go over the instructions for that today. That way you're set up to work on it over the weekend if you want to for that. All right, you are too much now, buddy. Little buddy. Okay, cool. So let me share my screen now. How's that? Everyone can see that?
Yeah.
Cool. So annotated bibliography. Let me minimize this. How many of you have done an annotated bibliography or maybe a works cited page where you comment on each of your sources before?
Me.
Me? Okay, that's one. Anyone else?
I have as well.
Okay, cool. So if you've done this before, you know basically what it is. It's like a works cited page, but you're just writing a paragraph or so, kind of commenting on your sources. So as it says here, Your ultimate annotated bibliography will have 9 entries on it, so you'll have 9 sources. But you're not going to use all 9 sources for your final paper. These are just the sources that you looked at that say, hey, I might use these, I might not use these, but they're really helpful, and I'm going to at least take a look at them more closely. You'll probably only wind up using about 5 to 7 sources for your final paper, which is fine. But I would rather you have too many sources to work from than not have enough by the end of the semester. I've put the rubric for grading these on Canvas. You can look at it at your leisure. But the template for this is pretty simple, actually. So you'll give your citation, just like you would for a works cited page, and then you'll give kind of a brief description or summary of the source, including the author's thesis or claim or conclusions. You don't want to copy this information from an abstract. If you're quoting from an article and they have the summary right there in front of you, don't copy that. You want to write it in your own words. But you can, when you're summarizing the text and listing the author's evidence and supporting details, you can quote at this point and use page numbers or paraphrases, anything like that. And then finally, you'll evaluate the source in one sentence. What makes it reliable, and how does this source offer you information that none of your other sources do? You can also say if a source is bad. Like, you're going to be looking at a source and kind of critiquing it and saying, hey, you know, this source says that they're doing this one thing, but really they're doing something else. That's also totally fine. But I do want you to kind of make some kind of value judgment saying, oh, this is good because of this, or oh no, this is not good or not helpful because of this. And each annotation is going to be about a paragraph long. So about half page, not too long, maybe like 150 words. But you do need those parts, the summary, the kind of synopsis of the thesis and the main evidence they use, and then of course your evaluation towards the end. And you'll do that for all 9 sources. For Friday, I want you to have 4 sources with annotations. I don't want you to have notes for them. I think originally I said do notes and annotations. That's too much work for you to do. I recognize that. So I'm going to take out the notes and just have you do the annotations. All of the notes would still be helpful for you to do if you have time to do them. Any questions about this project? This is more just kind of like a stepping stone on the way to working on your final research paper.
My question was, I took notes on my second source last night.
Okay.
And you told us to post it on the discussion board. Where is the discussion board?
The discussion board should be up now. I think I just created it this morning. So it should say like notes for 4 sources, or have you only done it for the second source?
Yeah.
I would put that if you're in your, if it's a source that you think might be helpful to others in your group, share it to your group discussion board. But if it's only really a source related to your research, then hold on to it for yourself. Yeah. Like,
Okay.
I know a couple of people found sources about advertising and gender that were really helpful for a number of people. But like, let's say like if you just found something that's related just to your topic that might not be helpful for the others in your group, you don't need to share it there.
Okay.
Other questions about the annotated bibliography or finding sources? We're going to talk about finding sources today, actually.
So, what are we submitting on Friday then?
So on Friday,
If
all you're going to do
it's-
is you've already found 1 peer-reviewed source. We did that right before the break, if I'm not mistaken. And you're going to provide 3 more sources, so 4 sources total with your annotations. It's kind of a brief summary and an evaluation of those sources.
Okay.
Submitting that for Friday just so I can make sure that you're on the right track, that you've got the things that you need. And then Monday, it's optional. You can submit 2 more just to have me look over them, provide feedback, etc. But you don't have to do that if you're busy over the weekend. But all 9 will be due between Wednesday and Friday of next week. So you'll have about a 48-hour window to submit if you need it. If you submit it earlier, I might give you like a couple bonus points or something. But if you need until Friday, you're not going to lose points if you submit it a couple days after the original due date. Sound good?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. If you do have any questions, let me know. I say for Friday, I want you to have 2 peer-reviewed sources and then 2 other secondary sources. Based on what I saw, what a lot of you are going to be researching in the days ahead, I know that for some of you, you're researching really current topics that may not have peer-reviewed articles on them. That's totally okay. In general, I want you to find, for Friday for certain, 4 really good analytical sources that are very reliable. And then for next Wednesday through Friday, all 9, you'll provide whatever you think is helpful for your paper. So if you can't find a peer-reviewed article, I totally understand. But then start looking at really good either newspaper opinion articles or magazines that do a lot of commentary and analysis and critique, or online blogs. There's some online blogs that can be really helpful as well. But anything that you find that is not just helpful, but also talks about your topic in a very intelligent way. So how do we do that? How do we find sources that are helpful to us? And the answer is, we have to know what we're looking for first. So I want to talk about, because I know a lot of you are probably going to be looking at, sources like newspapers and magazines and such. So I want to show you this media bias chart. Who has seen this before, or some version of it?
George.
George has. Great. Thank you, George. Cool. This is updated. This is done by Ad Fontes Media. It's updated pretty frequently. But basically, this tells you where different news sources fall on a range from, very, very left, very liberal, extreme left to most extreme right. And then what is original fact reporting, like they just state the facts and rely on straight news, and then who's doing more commentary and analysis, and then who's just putting out really ridiculous propaganda and extremism. So as you can see here, there's a lot of sources. They all overlap. But at the bottom of this chart, and I'll put the link to this chart on Canvas, it provides all the newest sources they have in alphabetical order. So let's say The Atlantic is really good if you're looking for really good commentary. So click on The Atlantic. And this green box right here we see is the most reliable for news. Then the second yellow box is reliable for news, but high in analysis and opinion content. And The Atlantic is squarely right on both. So it does reliable news, but it mostly does more analysis, opinion content. It is close to neutral, but definitely skews left. But this is a very reliable news source in terms of does complex analysis. So if you're looking at issues like politics or entertainment or the arts or anything like that, The Atlantic's got some really good stuff on that front. If you don't want something that maybe skews a little bit more left, or looking for that is a little bit more conservative, I recommend where is it? The National Review. It's a little bit further down right here. They do more opinion and fair persuasion, but they occasionally, in fact, pretty frequently, have really good analysis from economists and from political scientists who, even if you don't agree with them, they're backing up their arguments with pretty solid facts and pretty sound logic. Every now and then they do get into kind of the less reliable category down here, and that's because they will allow people who are kind of big figures in the conservative movement who maybe aren't scholars, like your Rush Limbaugh types, kind of let them come in and let them do articles and stuff. But most of their stuff, especially by some of their editors, is good analysis and pretty good content. But just kind of look out for that whenever you are looking at articles from a site like this, where you're saying like, oh, this seems really reliable. This is from a professor of politics at such and such university. Oh, wait, this is from Glenn Beck. Maybe I don't want to look at that one, or something like that. Has anyone found a source like this from a magazine or a newspaper? No one yet? There's lots of good choices out there. I would say anything in these green or yellow squares is going to be pretty good. Obviously, the higher up it is, the better in terms of fact reporting. For news stations, this is really interesting, actually. If you're looking at video news stories of CNN and Fox News, those are usually not very reliable because they're both pretty bent on catering to their audience. But oddly enough, their online sources are usually better. And I guess because their online articles are more, they're not like media personalities. These are actual reporters who are typing up these articles and putting them online. So if you find an article from Fox News or CNN online, chances are that's probably more reliable than what you might find on television that day. But just make sure you kind of take a look at it and make sure that there's nothing in there that sounds super kind of off the wall or extreme or anything like that. The AP, the Associated Press, they're kind of the gold standard if you want like a straight neutral fact reporting right there. And then in terms of Wall Street Journal, New York Times, obviously Wall Street Journal is slightly more conservative. New York Times is slightly more liberal. But both of them have pretty good fact reporting and analysis and commentary. Definitely don't go any further south of the middle line here. Like, definitely don't call from Wonkat or InfoWars or the National Enquirer, because those are almost always presenting fake news or really extreme views that are not based on any kind of fact, unless you are quoting from them for a very specific purpose. So let's say that you want to look at how, trying to think of a way to put this. Let's say you want to look at specifically at how far-right news sites advertise to women. Well, then you might want to go to InfoWars to see, like, okay, like what kind of ads are appearing on this particular news site. I don't think any of you are doing anything like that, but I would only pull from anything down here if it's if you're using it for like an illustration or kind of like a case study. If you're going to pull from facts and supporting articles and stuff, pull from up here. Now, obviously, these aren't peer-reviewed articles or journals that we're going to be looking at right here. These are all just kind of like basic reporters or experts in their field, but no one's kind of rating these articles after the fact and saying, oh, this looks great, you need to fact check this, oh, fix this right here. They're just kind of taking it as is and publishing it. So while it's really good stuff, it's not necessarily always the pinnacle of scholarship. And for that, you're going to want to go to scholarly databases. Before we move on to the scholarly articles, I want to talk a little bit about this chart and how helpful it can be. They also, if you click on down here, like see information about each individual news source, it'll give you some of their more recent articles and tell you how reliable or biased they are. So let's just kind of scroll through. That's my coffee maker in the background. Financial Times, I'll just pick this one at random. So Financial Times, it tells us right here, on a scale between 0 to 64, scores above 24 are pretty good and acceptable. Scores above 32 are generally good. The score here is 46, so it's pretty good. The reliability for this source is really, really good. And the bias goes from negative 42 to plus 42. And obviously, the closer you are towards 0, the more neutral you are. And here, the bias is about neutral. So Financial Times seems to be a pretty good source if you want to pull from it for whatever reason. And they give you your individual articles right here, where they give the quality index on one side and the bias on the other. It doesn't list like on the side here what these are, but let's say like none of these are super incredibly biased, but like let's say we just kind of like to look up this one right here. So U.S. court backs, fine, whatever. U.S. court backs AT&T's acquisition of Time Warner. From what we could see over here, very reliable, 48, a little bit more biased towards the left, just negative 5 points or so. But still very reliable, even though it does kind of skew in that direction. So if you find yourself kind of wondering, oh, is this source that I'm looking at reliable? Are they biased? Should I be looking at this kind of stuff? This media chart can be really helpful to use. And like I said, I'll post that link to Canvas later on today. Any questions about that or concerns?
Do our ads count as a source, or are those separate?
Yeah, the ads count as a source. I'll say that. You probably don't want to have more than two visual ads for your actual paper. You can talk about other ads that you find, but I would limit the actual cited ads to maybe about 2 or so. Just because I do want you pulling from news sources that that you're kind of in conversation with. So, for example, if someone's writing about the coronavirus, I want to see how they're incorporating information from other news sources and kind of synthesizing it and building off of it and stuff like that. So images are good. In fact, I encourage you to find images and include them, comment on them, provide context for them. Where did you find those images? Who are they produced by? But then I also want you finding news articles as well that put that image in context in some kind of way, that comment on the issues that that image represents.
What about the required images and the required article that like were in our groups? Do we need to include those in our annotated bibliography?
You don't have to. Those are just helpful. Those are just meant to be helpful for you, that if you want to use any of those images, you absolutely can, or any of those articles you can, but you don't have to. That was just kind of meant for you to have a foundation from which to work from, where you could be like, oh, like I really like this ad, I want to write about this thing. But if you find other images that you want to look at outside of what your group found, that's totally fine as well.
Okay.
Other questions? Cool, awesome. So let's talk a lot more about finding scholarly sources in library databases. So I've had you do this before. You've all looked at peer-reviewed articles before. I want to go a little bit more in depth into this now. In better case scenarios, we would have a librarian come in and kind of talk to us and do a presentation. They are very busy right now. I don't know if you know this or not, but they are still available on campus to help you through virtual help whenever needed. So if you have an issue, if you find a librarian that's related to your topic that you're researching, feel free to email them and be like, hey, I found this source. I don't know if it's working for me or not. Can you give me other advice or feedback? I'm sure they'd be happy to help you with that. So if you go to the Find Your Own Library webpage, before you even search for anything here generally in the library, I want to point you towards these research guides here. Because what I like about these is they're broken up by topic. And if you know generally what it is that you're going to be researching, you can dive right into whatever it is that you're going to be focusing on without having to dig through everything else. So for example, a lot of you are looking at advertising, obviously. So under arts and communication, there's an advertising research guide. So you click there and it tells you, here's a link for business articles. Here's a link for information about companies and ads. Here's a link to information about consumers. Images and copyright. If you want to, if you haven't found really good images, you want to find some more, you can absolutely use this database right here. And then Megan Hewer, who's a wonderful librarian, also has her own recommended sources down here. Adage Data Center, where she offers profiles of top advertisers, agency and media family trees, market research reports, database first to understand industry. All these are really helpful if you're looking at advertising and want to look at the marketing side of things. So you might be able to look at it and be like, okay, can I find information about how Budweiser is trying to advertise to women? Or are they trying to advertise women? Are they maybe just focused on men? Or how does the company that owns Sky Vodka advertising to adults in some way? I'm sure the answer to those questions are somewhere in these kinds of research guides right here. So let's say we wanted to look at images and copyright. Kind of click on that here, just kind of an example. So we dive right in. Eventually it'll pull up. A lot of you are working on advertising, correct? Like that's a general topic you're working with, from what I can recall.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, so it gives you an overview of how to look for images and copyrights. It explains how to use it for Google Advanced Image Search. Can I use this image? Chances are any image you use for this class will be fine. You're not publishing this paper, so it's not like it's going to run into any copyright issues. And they tell you to find images, again, through Google Image Search. You can find photographs from Photor or free images. Images of artwork, if you're looking for anything like that, graphics. So all that can be really helpful for you if you're looking for other images maybe related to a particular brand that you're researching. So that's advertising. There's also stuff for art and art history. I know I've got a couple people working on graffiti art, obviously. So you may want to click on this category and see what is available for you here. Probably not going to use any of these in terms of like history photography or citation help, but you might use, what was it that I found? Art Store has 300 collections of over 2.5 million images. It also has research and material on Native American art from the Smithsonian and so on, but chances are they have some kind of collection for graffiti art on there, I would imagine. They also, down here at the A and AE portal, this is the Yale University database, they have over 175 ebook titles on art and architectural history that are free for you to use. So anyone working on graffiti or any kind of art or art history thing is probably going to want to look at this research guide here. Anyone else in these research guides see any topic that is helpful for them they might want to look into, or see if there's anything in those databases that would be helpful to you? I know some people are doing politics. You might want to look at political science, maybe sociology or women's and gender studies too, if you're looking at issues of gender. And over here in general, you've got magazines, newspapers, statistical sources. Chances are you can find some demographic information here if you need to. So lots of really helpful stuff for these research guides. So I recommend, if you don't know where to start here, because it'll point you in the right direction as to where you, what kind of databases you need to be looking at. So let's say we've got a pretty strong idea about what we want to focus on. We don't want to use the research guides. We just kind of want to dive right in. That's when you would use the library search to find articles, books, media, and more, obviously. I would imagine most, if not all of your sources will be articles, for those of you who are pulling from scholarly sources. However, SMU does have a very large collection of online books as well, and ebooks. So if you find a couple pages or a chapter from an ebook that you want to use, I encourage you to use that. I think there's a couple people, I already scanned some pages from books of my own that I sent to them. Might be helpful to you, might not be helpful to you. But I encourage you that if you find a book that relates to your topic, don't feel like you can't use it just because it's a longer work. Don't read the whole book, just read the sections that are related to your topic. But see what's in that book that might be helpful to you, especially if it's more recently published. So someone, should I pick someone at random? Someone speak up, talk to me about your research topic. Anyone at all?
Mine is about alcohol and how it like advertises for youth.
Awesome. Okay, so alcohol and youth, and we'll type in ads too, just see what comes up as well. So if I just type that in for everything, I'm gonna get, let's see, 20,000 results. That's way too many results. What I would recommend is narrowing it down to just articles and books. Depending on what kinds of articles you're looking for, you might also want to include newspaper articles. But that's probably it. Maybe book chapters as well. But let's apply these filters first and see what comes up.
Does that ad filter on the left do the same thing when on the previous page before, when you're searching and you press that little like space, if you click articles and it goes like peer reviewed?
Yes, I'm pretty sure it does. You might need to click the box that says peer reviewed on the side once you get into your search results. But yeah, if you just search within articles, it'll pull up only articles.
Okay.
So, and actually, in fact, I'll do this right now. I'll click on this little box right here, peer reviewed journals. I'll click apply filter real fast. If you see this little purple symbol right here, that means it's peer reviewed. These are the reliable journals. These are the ones that you want to be pulling from. You don't want to pull from anything that's open access. So here we've got a lot of really good options. This is a really recent journal article. Youth Exposure to Alcohol Advertising in National Magazines in the United States, 2001 to 2011. This sounds perfect for what Polina's researching. So we'll click on that. It's available online, really easy. And sometimes you can kind of scroll down and they'll provide an abstract, a little description. So here we got like the results section. So from 2001 to 2011, magazine alcohol advertising seen by youths declined by 62.9% from 5.4 billion impressions to 2 billion impressions. Most alcohol advertising was for spirits. Since 2008, alcohol companies achieved 100% compliance with their limited guidelines. However, youths were overexposed to magazine advertising relative to adults on average 73% of the time. So this sounds really interesting because it's saying that alcohol companies are getting better at not advertising to youths, but youths are still seeing these ads more often than adults are. So if Paulina's like, oh, like I really want to look at how this advertising appeals to youth, maybe the alcohol company isn't doing it intentionally, but there is something there that's still attractive to these underage drinkers. So this sounds like a really promising article that if she wanted to dive into. And it's only about 6 pages long. That's not a problem for me. Generally, I'll encourage you to look at articles that are between 10 and 20 pages long. However, given the circumstances that we're all in now, as long as it's a really good peer-reviewed article and more than maybe a handful of pages, I recommend looking into it and seeing what you find. Paulina, you like this one?
Yeah, I just took a photo of it.
Perfect, great. That's awesome. And it's really recent too, that 2017 one. Cool. So automatically, just from 2 minutes of searching, we found an article that was really helpful for her. So if nothing else, she's got at least 2 sources now. She'll read it, she'll write her annotation on it, and then just has to find 2 more sources for Friday. And again, if you want 2 of those sources to be your images or ads you might be using, that's fine. You can use that as well. I want you to find text sources if you can, but start looking for images if you need to as well. Good. So that was actually really easy. So now let's do someone else's. So someone not in the alcohol group. Talk to me about your research project.
I'm doing um Postmates, but there's like no peer reviewed sources on it.
Okay. Cool.
So I've been yeah.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, a number of you are focusing on topics that are a lot more current. So, food delivery services like Postmates or Uber Eats or HelloFresh. I know about someone writing about how the media is presenting coronavirus. I've got someone focusing on the Hong Kong protests that were happening last year, and I still think happening to a certain extent. So all these are very recent, so you're not going to have any peer-reviewed articles on them, but that's okay. So let's just kind of search real fast. Instead of using Postmates, let's just try food delivery apps and see what comes up. And we want to look at just articles. We'll throw books in there just for the fun of it. We'll throw newspaper articles too, just for the fun of it. See what comes up. Because some of your sources are probably going to come from more magazines or from newspaper, stuff like that. Although this looks like an interesting article here, International Journal of Hospitality Management, differences in perceptions about food delivery apps between single person and multi-person households. So if you're looking at how a person who lives alone uses food delivery apps compared to a family, maybe that could be interesting for you to look at. What else do we have here? Food delivery apps and negative health impacts for Americans. And again, this may not relate to Postmates specifically, but you can certainly look at the conclusions that the article draws and say, okay, how does this relate to my topic? Is Postmates doing these things? Or are they doing something different?
Right.
What if I got rid of peer-reviewed journals? Let's see what comes up then. So I want to see if we can get, like I said, Travel Weekly, probably a magazine. What if I just do? How about instead, what we do is go to the site Postmates articles. Because you absolutely can use Google. I encourage you to do so if you think it might be helpful. So for Google, you can go under news and see what's happening here. So in the Wall Street Journal, just a week ago, food delivery's big coronavirus test, can it deliver? This is really recent, so if you're writing about coronavirus and food delivery apps, good for you. But chances are you might want to look more at something like, again, Wall Street Journal's a good one. They probably have really good analysis. I'm trying to see something. Or let's try, Postmates might still be too specific. If we try food delivery articles, I want to see like articles from like really reputable magazines. The Atlantic. Okay, so why meal delivery companies are everywhere. I'm sorry, what was it, Audrey?
If you do like a Google search for this, you still need to be like cross-checking whether it's a reliable source or not through that chart.
I would recommend it. Unless you know for a fact that it's really helpful, like obviously big major newspapers like Los Angeles Times, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, anything like that, those are pretty reliable. But if it's like a magazine or online site that you're not sure of, check against the media bias chart. The Atlantic, we know, we looked at earlier, is a little biased towards the left, but pretty really good analysis and mostly neutral. So we got this article here, why meal delivery companies are everywhere. Meal delivery companies are the ultimate symbol of the most powerful force in business today, convenience maximalism. So this is obviously an opinion piece, but opinion pieces can be good because clearly this person is going to be making an argument of some kind and trying to convince their readers of the argument. So when Audrey's reading this, she might agree with what this guy's saying and be like, oh, this ties into what I'm saying by this. Or she might read what he says and disagree completely and say, no, he's actually really wrong. Postmates doesn't do this, or Postmates does this differently, or however she wants to interpret the article. But I would recommend that really good analyses like these are really good opinion pieces. Postmates is just under Uber Eats actually and above DoorDash. This could also be a helpful image. I'm allowing you, if you want to use graphs, you can. You'll just have to cite them from where they're coming from. And he, of course, you see down here, provides that source. Which companies win the food delivery war? Retail analytics company, second measure. So he cites his sources here. So if you're looking for something more, if you're researching something more recent, like food delivery apps or coronavirus or protests, anything like that, I recommend looking at really good opinion articles from The Atlantic, from National Review, from Foreign Policy is also a good one. The Economist is a pretty good one. Anything that you look at on the media bias chart that is kind of in this area up here. New York Post gets a little tabloidy, but isn't terrible. Huffington Post is obviously a bit more left, but could still be helpful depending on what you're looking at. But these can be really, really helpful in terms of finding stuff that's relevant and really helpful. I would still encourage you to try to find peer-reviewed articles where you can, but if it's just not possible, I understand it's just not possible.
Okay.
For most of you, that is not the case. Most of you are doing some kind of research where you are researching something that's been talked about before in some way, whether it's about advertising, gender, or whatever it may be. But there are a handful of you who are doing something more recent where you might need to resort to not less reliable sources, but sources that are kind of like on the front lines of reporting facts and providing analysis. We probably won't get a really good peer-reviewed article about coronavirus for like another year or two. That process is very slow going. So in the meanwhile, though, these sources are really helpful and really good there. Like I know Auden's looking at coronavirus response, so he might want to look at how CNN is presenting it versus Fox News or something like that, just as an example. So anything like that can be really helpful because obviously he's not going to find a peer-reviewed source on that particular topic.
Is there a specific amount of peer-reviewed sources we're required to have? Like
I would
we
like
did,
for you to
two.
have. I would like for you to have at least 2 on your annotated bibliography. If you don't use any of those for your final paper, that's probably fine. But I do want all the sources you use to be good, sound sources.
Okay.
So if they're not all peer-reviewed, I'll live with myself. It'll be okay. If this were a more normal semester, I might have said like, oh, they need to be peer-reviewed sources. But I think given the circumstances, I am perfectly fine if they aren't peer-reviewed sources. I want to see you try to look for at least 2. But if they aren't all peer-reviewed sources, I will accept that as long as they are really reputable sources. Other
Okay.
questions or concerns? Anyone just completely lost as to what they would do or can do with this kind of research? All of you were asking really good questions. I don't know if anyone looked yet, but I commented on all of your thesis statements and outlines and provided my feedback. I want to thank all of you, first of all, for providing really good feedback to one another. I saw people being really respectful, but also critical, saying, hey, you know, I like this idea, but you could work on this, or this could be more specific. Don't be afraid to be critical of one another. I know that you all respect one another. You're not going to say like, oh, Auden's an idiot, because it's not true. But don't feel bad if you have to say like, hey, like, you know, I just don't think you're on the right track here. Maybe try this instead. Because we're all here to help each other out, especially given the circumstances. We need to rely on one another. But I also gave my feedback to you. Please take a look at it. I just don't feel the need to go down any roads that I suggest to you. You can still do your own thing, but I was just asking questions or kind of prompting you in such a way to get you thinking about different issues. So for example, if you were thinking about like, let's say alcohol and gender, we kind of wrote about that already to some extent for our first paper. So now what I want to see is kind of a more concerted effort of like, okay, what's the bigger picture here? What are the implications of advertising different alcohols to different genders? My assumption is that reinforces certain gender stereotypes, like, oh, men drink whiskey, women drink martinis. So if a man drinks a martini, he must be more feminine. He must be less masculine, gay, whatever it is that that stereotype is. So that's kind of what I'm more looking for here, is what the bigger impacts of these kinds of ads are. Or even, I keep saying ads, if you want to look at commercials, if you want to look at the way news media promotes certain things with certain pictures. So let's say like what is the front page picture for the New York Times about coronavirus? Anything like that. All those images are chosen in such a way to make some kind of an argument. So if you can't necessarily find ads, but you find a really good commercial that you want to pull a screen grab from, totally fine, totally acceptable. Other questions or concerns? Is anyone totally lost? And it's okay if you are, you can admit it to me. Sometimes I'm lost too. Only had 1 cup of coffee today.
I had a Red Bull.
What's that, George?
I had Red Bull. You said you had a coffee.
Oh, yeah. Red Bull is also, Red Bull is my afternoon drink.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so we've got about 10 minutes left of class. I can let you go, or if you want me to look at one more topic, kind of search through the library databases one more time, I can do that for you. If you want to leave the meeting now, you absolutely can. If you want to stick around and look up more sources and stuff, I'm happy to help you. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Sounds good? Cool. In that case, if you want to leave the meeting now, that's fine. I will post this video once it's uploaded to YouTube. Hopefully very soon, hopefully by this evening. So if you want to look back at it again and kind of see the steps that we went through to find all these sources, you can absolutely do that. So if you want to leave, you can. If you want to stick around and ask questions or research more things, I'm happy to help with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem.
Bye.
Check my phone. Who's sticking around? Anyone? No?
I was thinking about sticking around just because I was hoping to find like one more peer-reviewed source.
Mhm.
Because it's really hard to find stuff. I found a couple like studies, but it's hard to find anything visually related on the peer-reviewed sources, which I don't think I might not find really, but it's difficult. Like I found one good article about diseases as it relates to leprosy, like
Okay.
food shortages relates to leprosy, but I haven't really found many other good sources on here, so I'm kind of looking to just find one or two more from a database.
It's a really interesting topic because what you're looking at basically is like how do news companies contribute to a certain sense of panic or a certain sense of chaos, because they thrive on that. If they can kind of create some kind of sense of emergency, more people tune in, more people watch. It's both understandable and not understandable. But you're right. I'm curious to see if there's been a whole lot of research done on this. So let's look at disease, panic, news. I'm just throwing out random topics now. Let's see what comes up.
Yeah.
So articles, and we'll throw books in there. Why not? Oh, let's see, that's not available online, unfortunately. This would have been really helpful though if it were. Actually, so let's take a look at this because they might give you a table of contents. Maybe. Ooh, they've got. So let's see. We also see how fear of disease often exacerbates racial, religious, and ethnic tensions, even though, as an epidemiologist, right, nature remains the greatest bioterrorist of all. These pandemics remind us of the limits of scientific research, as well as the role that human behavior and technologies play in the emergence and spread of microbial diseases. So everyone's been relating coronavirus to SARS because they're in the same family. If you wanted to email the library and be like, hey, here's this book, The Pandemic Century, could you please scan me the chapter SARS super spreader? I would be willing to bet they would do this for you. Do you know how to put in a request for a copy?
I do not.
Let's that.
Do I just email?
So I think the easiest way to do it was they might have changed their process with everything happening right now. So let's do virtual help. See what happens.
On an email? Okay.
Yeah, so it looks like you could ask a question, you can give more details. So if your question was like, hey, would you mind scanning this chapter of this book for me. And then in your explanation, say that it's specifically for disc 1313. Because if it's just for like, oh, like I just want to read this for fun, they probably won't get around to it really quickly. But if you say, oh, this is for a class that I'm using it for, they'll probably get back to you pretty quickly. And then it's obviously a
I guess research question.
research question or document delivery.
Yeah.
Yeah, either one of those. Because what they do is they scan it and then send it to you as a PDF. And yeah, that's it. So
I really want to use that one quote. Or just talk about how disease exacerbates religious, ethnic, and racial tensions. And then nature is the greatest bioterrorist of all.
yeah, those are really good quotes. The issue would be citing them because you don't know what page number they're coming from.
Yeah, exactly. I
Um,
know.
But you're right. I think that's really interesting. Because obviously right now we've been seeing it with, you might have seen in Louisiana, there are still certain churches that are still holding big gatherings. And it's
Oh, I'm
really this kind of
sure.
tension between more traditional Christian churches like Catholics, Protestants who are like, oh, we're not going to have service, we'll just live stream. But then you have these more evangelical churches that are like, no, we're not going to do this. We'll be protected. So I think there's something there in terms of religious tensions, racial, in terms of the Chinese virus controversy, people saying like, is it racist? Is it not racist? There's absolutely something to go off of here.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Do you want to take a screenshot of this or anything like that so that way you have this information?
Yeah. I'm going to take a picture of it right now.
Cool. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
And then you got the title of the chapter 2, SARS super spreader.
I'll take a picture of that too. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
No problem. So that can be really helpful. And then it's not quite peer reviewed, but Norton is a really reliable company. Norton publishes a lot of really good journalistic accounts. I'm trying to see if they give the guys credentials or anything. He's written a lot about pandemics and flus and stuff, so he knows what he's talking about. This seems really and he's written a in the Journal of American History about the influenza epidemic of 1918. So this guy seems pretty reliable if you want to use that source.
Perfect.
Sound good? Any other questions or concerns?
Yeah. No, that's it. I'll get on those, taking notes on the 4 sources. I found a couple from sources like CNN sources in the Atlantic. Those would also be fine, right? Because
yeah,
I mean they're not.
I like the Atlantic, even though I disagree with some of their writers sometimes. They have really good, thoughtful analysis. And CNN, of course, is really good just for like straight fact reporting if you find their articles online.
Yeah. Okay, perfect.
All right. Well, that's it. I'm going to stop sharing and end the meeting.
Okay.
All right. Take care.
Yeah.